they're not my favorite
Well, yeah.
people right now.
Good evening. This meeting of the Romulus Board of Education is called to order at 6 p.m. Ms. Beard, could you please call roll?
Here. Here. Mrs. Thunderbird.
Here.
Mrs. Buckley. Here. Mrs. Beard is present. Mr. McLaughlin.
Present.
Mr. Freed is on his way.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If any member of the Board of Education or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent portion of the agenda. A, approval. To approve the minutes of the Board of Education of the special meeting of May 1st, 2013, special meeting of May 2, 2013, special meeting of May 18, 2013, and regular meeting of May 20th, 2013. B, approval. To approve the personnel actions as submitted by Rebecca Peck, Director of Human Resources. Retirement. 2 Secretary 2s, head custodian, plumber, special education teacher, and elementary teacher. Recall of a bus aide. Resignation of a GSRP teacher aide, a shared time substitute teacher, auto lab teacher, special ed teacher, and social studies teacher. C, approval. To approve the bills for payment as submitted by Sherry Popazoglu, Director of Business and Operations, in the amount of $21,124.62. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. President, I move that we okay the consent agenda as written. Support.
It's been moved by Ms. Thunderbird, supported by Ms. Buckley. Any questions?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries 6-0. Next is the food service contract. Dr. Daniels, did you or Sherry want to speak to that?
Well, this is the same one that was presented a couple of weeks ago. Sherry, did you have any update on that?
We presented this information. Whoa.
Really working out.
I better not laugh. On June 14th, so it's the same information you have in front of you, was what you saw 2 weeks ago. And again, this is something that's already in our contract with Chartwells. We would be going into our 5th year with Chartwells as far as food service management. As most of you know, we actually have a bid out for 2013-2014. Responses to that bid will not come to the board until August 12th. So in the meantime, we have the need for a food service management company, which is why we're bringing this to you for the summer months with Chartwells.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education accept the Director of Business and Operations recommendation to renew the contract for Chartwell School Dining Services for the 2013-2014 school year with the following required contractual changes. Equivalent meal factor change 2.9925, current meal factor rate to 3.1000 per USDA MDE guidelines. This represents a 3.6% increase from the previous year. The current management fee of .0422 per meal will increase by 2.5% to the new management fee of .0432 per meal. The current administrative fee of $5,923 per month will increase by 2.5% to the new administrative fee of $6,071 per month. The advance pay of $90,000 remains the same. The current CPIU for December is 2.5%. There are no guarantees for the 2013-2014 school year. There is no client investment plan for 2013-2014 school year.
It's been moved by Mrs. Buckley, supported by Mrs. Beard. Any further questions?
Just so that, I just had one question, and this is not a question, but more kind of to confirm. This will not affect our student pricing?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no further questions, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is a state aid note.
I can address that as well. I'm going to put the motion on the floor and then questions.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve the borrowing not to exceed $7.5 million in state aid notes for the 2013-2014 fiscal year.
Support.
It's been moved by Ms. Buckley, supported by Ms. Funderburg.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, when a district starts to, this isn't the first year that the district has had to act upon a state aid note. This is actually our third year in a row. What's significantly affecting this is the fact that we are becoming a deficit district. We're not doing this per se because we are a deficit district, but as you know, when you're spending more than you're bringing in, which we have been doing over the course of the last 2-3 years, you have the need to borrow to make payroll, to pay your bills and things of that nature. Two things to bring up. This is a not to exceed note. For the first time, what the district will be doing is we will be acting upon the application that we file with the state aid note at the Department of Treasury. And then about a week prior to when those notes will be approved and decided upon, we will have the ability to bid that out to other banks. And the reason for that is to try to get the lowest interest rate. Because of our financial situation, it's in our best interest to make sure we get the best price, just as we're doing with any other RFP or type of service that we engage in for the Romulus Community School. So right now we're writing it not to exceed $7.5 million, but it actually could be less in terms of the interest portion of 3 to 4%. And just to give you a little history on the 7.5, I just want to make a couple notes. Keep in mind, one of the reasons that we have to do this, obviously, as I just mentioned, is spending more than we're bringing in. Second would be that we do not get a state aid payment in the month of September. We get 11 payments. I'm not really sure why the system is set up that way, but that's the way it is for every district. For Romulus in particular, our lowest point of cash flow is actually in January, but we have to borrow now in terms of meeting the deadlines for the state to be able to put these notes out. So we have to forecast out, obviously. And January really is our low point. There are several months, November, that there's 3 pay periods in the month, and it just ends up catching up to us in January. So just wanted to make those notes.
Just real quick, and so then we will receive our,
Good point.
in a sense, reimbursement from the state when?
So this note will be on August, we will get that cash flow on August 20th of this year.
Okay.
And we would repay this loan on the next August 20th of 2014.
Okay, so it's the following year.
Correct.
And I know that this is probably one of those conversations that we'll have to, that should probably be future conversations, but here you go. I know that our fund equity, we had gotten it to a point where we could skip this particular
Absolutely.
process. And, I feel like it's our fiduciary responsibility to establish that again, because with money that we're paying in interest to have this particular process, we could be using somewhere in our general fund. And so I'd like to, as we start having our future discussions, is how do we begin to rebuild our fund equity? And here you go, our fund equity is really what saved us from being a deficit district a very long time ago.
Absolutely.
And so it's no longer there. So I think it'd be within our best interest to rebuild that and to kind of look at ways that we can begin to do that again, so that we don't find ourselves in this predicament anymore.
It's a good point.
Well, I think at this point, we need to be worried about getting our bills paid so we're not borrowing. And I guess I still feel like anything that's not a necessity should be cut.
And
the Spanish teacher, has she been cut for the
yes,
elementary?
her position has been reduced out of the budget you'll see tonight.
And what about, are we still gonna have a policeman for the elementary schools?
That is in the budget for tonight, but again, the board's gonna have these.
I look at necessities. Somebody should be telling me, well, we can get by, we have to have this, but we could eliminate this. we can't be spending money the taxpayers haven't don't have. And so I guess I look at it as, how can I say we can borrow money that we don't know we can repay? If we're gonna be if we're gonna need someone to come in to manage it, then we should get an emergency manager. I mean, I feel bad. Inkster has been trying and trying and trying, and now they're there. But in the meantime, what has happened to their schools and to their employees and everything else? They have just, I really have a problem putting the residents in debt. This kind of money.
And I think those discussions will come along when we talk more about our deficit elimination plan in July and going forward.
Any further questions?
Nope, I don't have it.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
Nay.
motion carries 4-2. Next item on the agenda is the 2012-2013 revised budget approval. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education accept the Director of Business and Operations recommendation to adopt the final revised 2012-2013 budgets.
Support.
Been moved by Ms. Buckley, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Did you have a presentation on this?
I do. It's fairly, should be fairly quick. So basically, we're here tonight to end the school year financially and to finalize a budget. Those figures become very important when we are audited and faced with what the state calls the Uniform Budgeting Act,
Yes.
which requires us to be, within a certain percentage of our budget to our actual expenditures. So the projections become more real. Health insurance, utilities, some of the bigger items, delinquent tax collections, state aid, and in essence, prior year adjustments on those state aid payments, and then substitutes, whether we have individuals subbing for payroll that are either laid off from the district or coming back as a retired employee, or those on the PCMI side. So basically, things become more real. So in a nutshell, for revenue ending this school year, we're about $34,500,000. I'm gonna round it up a little bit. And as you can see, 55% of that comes from state sources, which is state aid. 29% comes from local, the majority of that being taxes, probably around 27%. The other portion would come from rentals and things of that nature in terms of our budget and our rental space that we rent out. 14% comes from federal grants, and then 2% is other, which are more like Medicaid payments and things that we get back from Wayne County RESA. By the way, it's pretty typical to have that kind of span in terms of where our state and local make up the majority of what we receive. In terms of expenditures, we're looking at $39,492,000. Again, 80% of that is spent on people and the benefits that we experience as employees of Romulus Community Schools. 11% is related to purchase services, and that would be including subcontracted teachers or teachers that are paid through contract services. 6% in supplies. 1% in capital outlay. The only capital outlay purchase we made was replacing the elementary computers, if you remember, back in August, September last year. And then transfers and other, which I could go through that, but it's really not a significant amount. So the bottom line is that officially today, you will be adopting this deficit budget. We will be a deficit district as of June 30, 2013. The state is already aware. They've known for several months that we were headed in this direction. This district will have to file a deficit elimination plan by July 31st. And just so you mark your calendars, we'll be having some study sessions in the month of July to make sure that this gets filed by the timeline and the deadlines that are to be met by the state. In terms of food service, again, we had Chartwell's as our management company this year. We did have a $25,000 grant that was awarded to Hale Creek for fresh fruit and vegetables. And then we were, in this year, in our 4th year of cost reimbursable contract with Chartwell's. And again, we started the year with about $106,000 in fund balance. We brought in a little over $1.5 million in revenue. We spent 1.6. We left this year in a deficit of about 103,000, a little over, but left the district in about a fund balance of about $2,800.
Can I ask a question, Sherry?
Sure.
The overage in expenditures in the food service, is that because of equipment purchases?
Part of it is, on the flip side of that, it's that participation is down.
Participation in the lunch program?
Paid students.
Okay, so when you say participation is down, does that mean they're not buying lunches or they're not?
Correct. Those who do not those who do not qualify for free and reduced lunches, those individuals' participation is lower than we've ever experienced before. So that means probably that they're bringing their lunch to school as opposed to buying from the cafeteria.
Or at the high school, they're buying the pizza or the chicken nuggets out
That's
of
a
the
very
school
good
store
point.
every day.
That's correct. There are a little bit more alternatives for them.
Okay.
Could it have
Which
anything
is-
to do with reduction in enrollment as well, too?
Part of it could be, but you have to remember as the enrollment goes down, so do expenses. And they
Okay.
should be, as one goes down, the other should be going down.
Okay.
Because we're not spending as much on food.
One other question, and I don't know if this would even apply, but I know that we recently increased our lunch price. Do you feel that maybe that may have had something to do with the lack of participation?
That's possible. I haven't investigated that thoroughly, but it's a good.
Would we be able to do something like that?
I could try to find
Just
out.
Figure out,
Mhm.
because that could possibly
Yep.
be a reason why
Yeah.
the numbers are down.
That's true. I could find out from, see if Chartwells will be able to provide me any information. Other than that, we'd have to do some type of survey or something.
Okay.
The good news is that, this management service will be bid out. So my hope is for next year that we'll receive better results because bidding usually provides for an opportunity of lower costs. So we can build that fund balance back up. Community service, the only two programs that are in our community service budget right now are the WIC Latchkey and that it's a surplus program. This is probably I've been here, it's about 6 years now we've been operating in a surplus. When I first started, that program was spending more money than it was bringing in, and we've adjusted that, and we've been able to maintain that. So that program brings in about a little over $15,500, and the expenditures, which there's nothing there, but there should be. I apologize for that. You have that in front of you.
115,276.
There you go. We spent $15,276, which means that program brought in $1,708 more than it spent. Those funds directly transfer into general fund. It's not like food services where every dollar that you make has to stay in food services. This program, the actual revenue or anything you make can be transferred into general fund, and that's what we've done. In terms of debt service, for this year, we levied 7 mills. This program is restricted and can only be used, those tax dollars can only be used to pay principal and interest on the bond debt. And just as a reminder, we did have to borrow from the school bond loan fund in 2012-13. It was actually in the May of 2013, a little over $2.7 million. That's different than the loan that you took tonight. This loan is a little bit different because what happens is over time those debt payments become lower, and over time we will raise enough revenue from the mills that we're allowed to levy to offset this in the future. So this probably won't be a direct payback, but eventually we'll be able to reduce the levy and still have savings to our community by having a millage that's less than 7 mills, but be able to pay it back over time. Because remember, sorry about that, they don't expire till 2026. So we've got a long way to go.
Would it also be correct in stating that the reason we borrowed from this bond loan fund is so that we don't have to, we could as a board levy
Great point.
more than 7 mills.
That's a great point.
But we're trying to keep the millage rate lower in the community. So
That's correct.
We're keeping it at 7 because statistically we can carry that out through 2026.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. We could levy, 8 mills and not have to do this. But instead of passing that on to the community right now, we're going to keep those mills where they are, and we'll catch up later by not increasing their taxes. Thank you for bringing that up. So we brought in from last year $44,000 in fund balance. The revenues were $21 million, expenses were almost 21 million. This program actually has a surplus of 571,000, which actually has an ending fund balance of 615,681. So that'll go into next year. And as you can see, if there's a fund balance at the end of the year, it's just less borrowing we have to do in the next year. All that this means is we were able to capture enough revenue to pay the debt and service payments, interest and principal for this year. Also keep in mind, we had some savings when we refunded those bonds, which helped. And then lastly, the sinking fund. If you remember, we only levied 0.375 on the winter tax bills. And those funds can only be utilized for repairs and maintenance of buildings. This particular year, we used it to pretty much to have a whole new high school fire alarm system. And then we did tennis court repairs at the high school. And then we did use it for general in terms of brick and mortar maintenance and operations repairs to the district, which is what it's for. So we brought in fund balance that coming into the year was about $360,000. We had about $355,000 of revenue, 608 of expenditures, $252,000 is what we used, which left us with an ending fund balance of $108,000. And this is why I want to stress to you in terms of why the sinking fund is so important. If we wouldn't have had the ability to levy those tax dollars this year, there was probably $400,000 that the general fund would have had to pay for repairs and maintenance of operations. As you know, our buildings are getting older. We had a lot of chillers go down this year in the last couple months. And just in general, boiler, and we have some new boilers in the district, but some of them are very antiquated. So I just wanted to make, that's a point I want you to know going forward. It's critical. So that's it to sum up 12-13. Do you have any questions before I move on to next year?
Any questions on 13, 14? I'm sorry, 12, 13?
Okay.
Hearing none, the motion is on the floor to approve. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5 and 1.
Okay, so now we're moving into, and I see this is incorrect. It should say 13-14.
Let's go ahead and get a motion on the floor.
Sorry.
What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education accept the Director of Business and Operations recommendation to adopt the proposed 2013-2014 budget.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Buckley, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Mr. Fazaglu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So now we're going to move into the 2013-2014 budget hearing. This isn't the first time you've heard information about this budget tonight. We've been talking about it for months. So let's get into the details. Basically, let's talk real quickly about the budget process. So now that we're a deficit district, one of the things that we have to do by July 31st is file the plan. And again, that will require the board to have some conversations in the month of July. But we prepare a budget calendar to be prepared for these kinds of things as we know information is available. As you know, a lot of times we don't even know what the state's budget's going to be until the last minute. That's an issue. In most cases, we don't know what taxable values are going to be until the month of May, possibly April. So those are some of the things that I watch out for during the course of the year. And as I find out information, I will make sure the board is kept abreast of all of that. We gather requests from buildings to know what kind of site-based budget they need and what kind of expenses they have on their side. We compile the state aid info as much as we can. We project student enrollment. We compile staffing issues and retirements, things of that nature. We project fringe benefit costs. We prepare a preliminary budget during January and April, and that's really a working document. We start in January and we work through it till April as things become more clear and concise from the level of what we know our revenue is going to be or what we know our expenditures are going to be. And then if necessary, we prepare a budget reduction plan, and the budget is updated all the way through June, and they approve it in June as they are tonight. So some of the things that have been assumed in preparing this budget for you in the community is that there's an increase in the state aid per pupil for Romulus of about $30. It'll get us to $8,462. But I want to caution you with that. There are cuts in other categoricals, which actually has a negative impact on the district. So please understand when the media is saying to you that we are receiving increases in state aid funding, they're not telling you that there are categorical cuts that have affected Romulus Community Schools along with every other school district in the state of Michigan. The board decided 2 weeks ago that the non-homestead mills would be 18 and that the hold harmless millage would be 1.317, and that includes a reduction from the at-risk reduction from 1213 of about I want to say 0.46. Don't quote me on that.
If we can interject right there, that hold harmless millage is a reduction from the
1.914 is what it was this year.
For the listening audience, so that they understand we lowered our taxes.
Thank you. Transportation and athletics are included in this budget. I am assuming that there will be a decline in enrollment of 200 FTEs and that the state, it will have a 90%. They have changed things this year. They're going to take 90% of whatever your September count is, and then they're going to take 10% of what your next February count is. In the past, they've always done what we know February was for this year, so they would have taken February of 2013 at 10%, and then September of 13, 90%. They're flipping that now. And that's in order for them to catch up on those reduction of enrollments, how they're sharing between districts. If you lose students mid-year, they will be able to reflect that. That's why they're doing this. It did have an impact on us. I don't have the dollar amount in front of me, but it's not, that's another negative aspect of the way that they're doing or that they're passing the state aid budget. The budget reduction plan that we've been talking about for several months in different meetings has been implemented. This budget assumes that concessions were taken in all employee groups, even if an employee group has not settled a contract. It's assumed that there will be a certain amount of concessions adequate to the percentage that other district employees and other groups have taken. It assumes that we are moving the community high school to the high school in its own wing. That staff reductions were taken as necessary, and it also includes the retirements and basically people who have terminated their positions or work with Romulus Community Schools. I think you're aware that we're moving from PCMI as a contract service vendor over to EduStaff. It's about a $25,000 savings annually on a minimum. Grant revenues reduced to sequestrian. We don't have final numbers on some of our grants, like IDEA. Because I budget conservatively, I believe my grant allocations are probably lower than what we're getting. The good news is if we do get more than what I've expected, most of those grants pay for salaries, and we will be able to move some of those salaries from the general fund into the grants. So it will help the bottom line and the fund balance if that's the case. I'll let you know when I know. I think they're still figuring that out. Retirement rate is increasing from about 4.47% up to 24.79. So for every dollar that we spend on an employee, we're almost paying 25% to belong or to participate in the retirement system. And it's not a voluntary participation, it's a mandatory participation. For the first time, health insurance, all employees are subject to the hard cap with this budget. The SIG grant, as most of you probably know, is completed this year. There's a little bit of carryover money to go through September, but that grant will be finalized in the month of September 2013. It assumes that we're getting Medicaid reimbursement catch-ups in 13-14. That's one of those things that we're not really sure when we get it, but we will get a reimbursement by the end of June 2014. In terms of grants, if it's not confirmed, it's not included. I have the state aid loan in there that you just passed. The early college program that was implemented or will be implemented at this school year, but voted on several months ago. We increased our marketing budget in hopes that our student enrollment would increase as a direct effect of that. And those mailings, some of those mailings have already gone out, so we hope to see something good come out of that. This budget includes the school resource officer that we have in an agreement with the City of Romulus Police Department. And in terms of athletic, I was charged to work with the athletic director in terms of reducing expenditures. And the plan that he has come up with is to eliminate lacrosse completely due to low participation. There was only 7 or 8 kids from what I understand. and the JV tennis team, again, due to very low participation. And then to combine the 7th and 8th grade football team, the 7th and 8th grade volleyball team, and the 7th and 8th grade basketball teams, boy and girl. Okay? And that's equivalent to about a $42,000 savings.
Real quick, as far as getting to these particular savings, I'm just wondering, I know that that was one of the things that we asked for, so I thank Mr. Woodson for working on this. But I'm just wondering, does he have or did he share what type of input he got from the middle school as far as the parents and that kind of thing? Because and if he could get us how he kind of came to this, and I know, you know, it's going to be something that would, if we okay it tonight, it'll be implemented in the fall. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm just, you know, wondering what the input was like, if there was any, how much was it, more or less, just did he just go by just the numbers, or
He went by participation.
Okay.
And low participation.
Yeah, I mean, that only makes sense.
The only negative aspect, besides not having the sports at all,
Okay.
in terms of the middle school football, volleyball, and basketball, is because they fall into a different category against competition.
Right.
So he had to reschedule. He will be rescheduling some of the way that the games are played because of the fact that they're now 7th graders playing with 8th graders. But
Okay.
he seemed to think it was doable. It was
Okay.
his suggestion.
Okay.
But I can ask.
Okay. Thank you.
And remember, you know, as we talk about this budget, I gave you the assumptions. Those are things we know today. They could change tomorrow.
Right.
It's a living document. I mean, I literally have the budget open every single day because minor things can happen. You know, people want to adjust the way that they spend their site-based budget, which is okay, as long as they don't spend any more. But that's the one thing I want you to walk away with tonight. You know, it's obviously a living document. We have a lot of work to do in the month of July. But the things that you're going to decide on tonight, and the things that I've assumed here, again, those may change, and we may be back here, you know, after July talking about some of these things. So in terms of general fund revenues, we have state aid, taxes, grant revenues, tuition in terms of summer school and adult ed, rental revenue, sale of property, and the athletics revenue. So just to give you an indication on how the foundation allowance looks, and again, this does not include categoricals. Remember, I mentioned to you that we had a $30 increase, but the categorical reductions offset that $30 increase to actually have a negative impact on us. But you can see over the course of the year where we've been in foundation. 2007, 2008, we were at look at 8-9. We were at $9,100. Next year, we'll be looking at $84.22. And then in terms of the total revenue, this is not the revenue just brought in from state aid, but just in terms of what the district's revenue in total is for the district. You can see the decrease from a $42 million. I mean, we've $10 million less in revenue over the course of those years. And then some student enrollment history. I'm not going to go over it in detail because I think we all know the answer to this, but what I'm projecting in terms of state aid for next year is 2,795 FTEs. We're currently at a little over 3,000.
Could you say that again, please?
2,795. And I hope this increases when we talk about this in the fall. And so, you know, in terms of the piece of the pie, we're talking about a little over $32 million in revenue. Again, 53% of that coming from the state, 29% coming from local taxation and a few other items, 7% for federal, and 11% coming from other. Included in that other, that 11%, is the sale of property that we still have on the market today. We've sold one piece, and that is reflected in the 12-13 budget for revenue, and the rest of them are in here. For general fund, I'll go real quickly. Of course, we have salaries, fringe benefits, retirement, FICA, technology, teacher supplies, transportation, grants, maintenance, and utilities. Those are the big hitters in terms of the budget. When someone asks, what is your budget made of? Pretty much these are the big ticket items. Everything else is pretty minimal. And when you look at the pie chart, $32,082,000 is what we spend. As you can see, not very well. The salaries is 45%, benefits is 28%, purchase services 20%, supplies and materials 6%, capital outlay nothing. We have nothing in the budget this year to replace capital equipment, whether it's buses or custodial equipment or computers, and then others and transfers is 1%. And these are the charts I actually, when I get into them, I like explaining these or displaying them to you because it makes sense. It really shows the real picture in terms of insurance and benefits or retirement and what they mean to the district. So you can see for the course of the year, pretty much things were all going up over all the way to 12-13. When I say things, I mean retirement and insurance. Those two items have obviously consistently gone up. And for the first time, we're seeing a decline. Now look at the health insurance, which is the light blue section. You can see it went from 13.62% of our total spending to 9.2%. That is a direct reflection of Public Act 152. So that's the percentage savings that we have in terms of the total budget. And then you can see the retirement rate actually went up to 14.10%, but because of the concessions that the district is taking, that actual amount is going down in terms of the total that we're spending on those two items. And then the next slide shows you a cost per student. So for every student, health insurance in terms of employees of the district is $1,058. And in terms of retirements, it's $1,618. Again, that difference between the blue is a direct reflection of Public Act 152, and then the retirement is a reflection of the concessions.
Real quick, Sherry, could you kind of just give an explanation of PA 152?
Absolutely. Public Act 152 is the health care hard cap or 20% requirement that the state of Michigan put into law. And for Romulus Community Schools, our board has decided that we were going to be a hard cap district. Basically what that says is that every employee is allotted up to X amount of dollars that the district will pay for health care. Anything above and beyond that is the employee's responsibility. And we've been working hard with all of our groups to try to stay under that cap so that the effect on the employee is minimal as much as we can.
Thank you.
So we're coming into the year with a deficit of $2.6 million. The good news in all this is that we have revenue of $32,307,000, and we're spending less. Although it's only $224,000 less, we're going in the right direction. In the last 4 to 5 months, we've been able to reduce our expenditures through many ways, mostly through concessions, but some of it is just bidding out, like the EduStaff services and things of that nature. We've been able to cut $5 million in that short period of time. So I commend the board, I commend the staff who are working really hard with us to be able to do this, because if I were to submit something to the state that actually made our deficit worse, it wouldn't be good. So it just shows the state we're serious about this and we're headed in the right direction. The next slide talks about the deficit again. I kind of beat that. I just want everyone to know we have a job to do in the month of July. And then just to follow up with that, they provide us 2 years. So technically by June 30, 2015, we have to be at a deficit. They do provide extensions, but they're only approved by the MDE. So, you know, your plan is to try to get out of deficit in 2 years. We don't want to have to go through this every year and then over and over. And then they monitor us on a monthly basis. I'm required to submit reports every single month to the state to show them where we are in budget and show them what kind of spending we have in a month. So they make sure that, you know, we're in line with what we said we were going to do.
Sherry, at MDE is?
Michigan Department of Education. Okay, general fund per pupil. I always like to put this up here because I think that's an interesting piece of data to know. And you can see from last year to this year the impact that the concessions and things of that nature have had. We're spending less per pupil, and we're also bringing in less per pupil, but that's because we're projecting a 200 student decline. So we're basically spending a little shy of $11,500 a student. And then you can see the fund balance, where we were back in the good old days, and where we are today. It just gives you a picture. The good news again is in 13-14, you know, you can see where the dark blue line is. It has been for, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we've been spending away the fund balance, and that was because we wanted to maintain the educational program we had at the time. That was a decision the district made, but that's not a decision we can make anymore because we don't have a fund balance to fall back on, and I think that's what Ms. Funderburg was trying to say earlier. So again, this just depicts the information in a different way. Importance of fund balance, I think Ms. Funderburg alluded to this, but again, it's recommended to have 5 to 15%. It helps when you have unexpected decreases in revenue related to state aid prorations or taxable values, emergency situations where you have to have some major repair done or something of that nature. And again, cash flow is on here. That's a great example, and it's just good fiscal management. So we're going to keep talking about this slide, even though we don't have a fund balance. I don't want to lose sight of why it's very important. You know, what should we be watching for between now, especially now in September, is enrollment. Looking at the Michigan Tax Tribunal cases. So if someone appeals to the Michigan Tax Tribunal and they win the case in which they are refunded taxes, we end up getting those dollars back from state aid, but it's a cash flow issue. We may not get it back for several months. So that's something we like to watch. And then, of course, property tax values. Okay, let's move into food services. As I mentioned already, these services are up for bid, and the bids are due in mid-August. I believe August 12th. Those bids will be presented to the board by myself with a recommendation. In that, we have indirect costs for admin and operations. And those pretty much are the time the principal spends in the cafeteria overseeing the cafeteria operations. We're allowed to charge some of that to food services. Now, in front of you, you have a revised budget. I didn't make that clear. It'll say on the top, 624. Some of the categories got displayed wrong on the original one that you have. And because this budget is out for bid, it was a difficult one to project. So I basically left what we had in hopes that the bidding process would fare well to us in terms of give us great results and we'd have less expenditures and the same amount of revenue. And again, the reason I wanted to bring that to your attention is because, again, this is a living document. We will know more in August and we can update this budget then. But I'm assuming that we at least break even. Community services, I have pool on there. Unfortunately, right now we don't have any revenue in terms of the pool scheduled for 2013, 2014, and that is reflected in your budget. You won't see revenue, but I just want to remind you it is part of the budget. So that could change. That could only be a positive thing because for the most part, there's no expenditures directly associated to this fund for the pool. Most of those are because we have to have the pool open for everything else anyway. And then Latchkey. We are exploring the option of opening another Latchkey site. We took a survey late in the spring, and we're kind of gathering all that information. Hopefully, we'll have something for you in the next couple months to see if we can start another location for Latchkey.
Now, our Latchkey program is the times that those students are early morning or after school?
We only do AM.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why is because we have a large boys and girls club in the afternoon. They're both located at the same place. But we are looking at the opportunity. Boys and Girls Club does not service children age 5.
Right, so our
So
kindergartners
we're
are
missing the opportunity for those students to have before or after school care. And we're trying to fix that. We just want to make sure financially we can fix it and it pays for itself. So you should be hearing more about that in the near future. Again, the program will bring about $1,400 into the general fund. Again, 7 mils on the debt service. We can only use it to pay bond and interest. And there's an additional loan needed in 2014. I explained that earlier. We would have the option this year of increasing those mills above 7 or taking the loan with the school bond loan fund and paying it off over the course of the next less than 20 years, but a long time. And there's the fund balance in terms of debt service. We will end about $35,000. And again, that's subject to change. We could have another refunding this year. We just don't know yet. That really, the market decides on when that's something that's valuable to the district.
And property values could go up.
That's a very good point. And then lastly, the sinking fund, the district will levy 0.75 for the 13-14 year. It can only be used to pay construction and repair of school buildings and for facility repairs. We don't have any major projects right now that we're doing. We'll look at the facility study and see if there's anything that absolutely has to be done with these funds. I think a little bit at a time. I think that's next on our list is to do some of the parking lots. We were able to, Wick got resurfaced, portion of Wick, and I think Barth. I don't think Hill Creek did. But again, it is on the top of the list.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you know. But we still have over $13.5 million of facility repairs we could make.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have the funds for
That's
that.
the study that we had done about
It's
3
been, I want to say
years ago.
2008, prior to when the sinking fund
Is it that
passed.
old?
Yeah,
Oh, God.
yeah.
And started dating myself.
So what does that look like? Again, we're bringing in 108,000 fund balance, revenues of 662, spending 769. We're basically spending down fund balance. And again, this is an estimate. We may end up with more fund balance. I can tell you we won't end up with less. But it's there for a purpose. It's there to help maintain our buildings when we can't pay for it out of general fund. So that's it. Questions and comments?
Board members?
I don't mind.
There's no questions. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-2. Did you want to talk about the literacy initiative?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of update the board and the community. We've been really working hard to work with organizations in the community to help build the literacy not only for our students in school, but for the community at large. So together, the library, Wayne County Community College, the Rotary Club, and Romulus Community Schools are looking to put together some activities that will provide some support for members of the community. We've had requests from many of our citizens who would like some support when it comes to literacy. Basic things like learning how to read, you know, a lot of us take it for granted, but there are those who are still struggling. So we've come together and we're putting together some plans. Reading around the world, I have not let that drop. We're still going to do that too. And that's really one of the places where we kind of started having a conversation, and it started coming out that a number of the organizations were getting some of the same requests. So do know that we're in the throes of getting started to really put some services together. Yes.
Could you kind of talk a little bit about reading around the world? Because I think as board members, we are a bit familiar with it, but I'm
Okay.
not sure if our
I would
community
be
at
happy
large
to. During last year's Camp Learn a Lot, one of the activities that the students did, and last year our theme was built around the Olympics, and you know, the whole carrying the torch, you know, starting it from Greece and taking it around the world. So one of the things that the staff decided to do was to read around the world, and they started a couple of places. Well, they started at Romulus, and we went to Greece, and then we started our way around the world. But the way you got around the world for the program that we had, every page that students read represented 1 mile. So we were trying to see if we could read enough pages that equaled enough miles to get all the way around the world. Well, we got around more than once. So that was, you know, really exciting. But then what we decided we wanted to do, we wanted to make it a community effort. And instead of just pages, we wanted to read books, and each book would represent 1 mile. But it would not just be our students, but would be coming from all of the citizens in the city. So we've got a number of teams who are coming together to try to help flesh it out and see what that looks like. There's not gonna be any big prize other than that we did this together. You know, we ratcheted it up. We had our own, you know we've got book clubs in the community and all kinds of opportunities. So, one of the Honor Society at the high school has been working with us, and a couple of other groups. And what we're gonna try to do, we're gonna try to have a kickoff in the fall, a little preliminary during the summer, getting us ready again. But we're going to see, starting with the fall, how many times can we get around the world reading books by June. But then we want to keep it a thing that just keeps on going and see how, hey, we're the gateway to the world, and like I said, this is the destination. We want to get out and go around, but we want to keep making sure that we touch base back at home. But that is what reading around the world for us is going to look like, and it's going to be a community effort.
Next item on the agenda is communications and expressions from the public. Did anybody wish to address the board this evening? No? Next item will be questions and concerns of board members. Ms. Bowles?
Don't have any today.
Thank you. Ms. Scrubb?
Nothing.
Thank you. Ms. Bunner?
No, not
Thank you. Ms. Buck?
Yes, one thing, I went to Hill Creek's graduation, and moving up, I guess, of the fifth graders to the middle school. But what I love to see is that each student, our initiative for College Bound, each student said what college they were going to attend. And, the dreams and the things that they had was just amazing to me, what they said they wanted to be and where they wanted to go. And it was a perfect opportunity. I asked Ms. West to mention our early college program, and the parents were so excited. I'm telling you, they were just really excited about it. So I talked to several parents on the way out about it, and they didn't even know anything about it. So it was a perfect opportunity to kind of put it out there. So it was a great event. So
Thank you.
that's all I have.
Mr. Beard?
No, I haven't.
The only thing I have, several of us were able to attend along with Dr. Daniels, who was the featured speaker at this month's Romulus Chamber of Commerce business luncheon. And Dr. Daniels did a wonderful job representing the school district, was well received by the chamber, and we're looking forward to increasing the relationships between the business community, between the school district and the city. Talking about the literacy initiative, Patty Braden, the library director, who has been extremely forthright in reaching out to the school district ever since she became the library director, actually sought out to sit at our table so that she could talk with Dr. Daniels while she wasn't doing her presentation. So those two ladies aren't skipping a beat with this. So I'm excited and looking forward to more things to come. With that, the next item on the agenda is an executive session for purposes of negotiations update. The chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. President.
There is not, there is not intended to be any action tonight after the executive session, just for the audience's information.
Mr. President, I move that we go into executive session.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Funderburg, supported by Mrs. Buckley. Mrs. Beard, could you do a roll call vote for me, please?
Mrs. Bowles?
Yes.
Mrs. Crowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Hunterberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
6:54.
Thank you. We are in executive session at 6:54.
I'll be right back.
Session.
So move.
Support.
It's been moved by Ms. Funderburg, supported by Mrs. Kraut. Ms. Beard, could you do roll, please?
Yes, I can. Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraut?
Yes.
Mrs. Funderburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Buckley?
Yes.
Mrs. Beard, yes. Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes. We are in open session at 7:36. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
It's been moved by Ms. Funderburg,
Support.
supported by Ms. Beard. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned. It's
7:36.
7:36.
Dude, that is